Chinese state-run newspapers are reporting that China would not be frightened of fighting a war with the U.S. Well, that's because about a day ago, Washington decided to challenge Beijing's territorial claims in the region by deploying a warship to waters around the disputed Spratly Island archipelago. Now, the U.S. is being accused of provoking China by sailing our ships so close to these artificial islands that they're making. It was the guided missile destroyer USS Lassen, which we decided to sail right by one of these islands, and that really pissed off China. Now, a state-run newspaper with links to the Communist Party, here's what they had to say. In the face of the U.S. harassment, Beijing should deal with Washington tactfully and prepare for the worst. This can convince the White House that China, despite its unwillingness, is not frightened to fight a war with the U.S. in the region and is determined to safeguard its national interests and dignity. Now, I think they're blowing things out of proportion, way, way, way out of proportion. But China's leading military newspaper also went on to use a front-page editorial with pictures of Afghanistan and Iraq and talking about how the U.S. has sowed all of this chaos in the region. So I think we're seeing a bunch of propaganda, anti-U.S. propaganda in China to kind of steer people's attention away from what the Chinese are doing in the region. Yeah. And what they are doing is claiming basically the entire South China Sea. Now, we have an image. We can go full screen on it. Now, this is what they're saying is theirs. Now, look at Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines. That border that they're saying is theirs is basically creeping all the way onto their shores. I mean, it's just ridiculous that they would need the entire South China Sea. Yeah. You can't just claim an entire ocean. But what we're doing there is doing our normal patrols through these areas that they claim are theirs, right? Because we're saying, well, China, you can't just go and just say that this is my ocean all of a sudden, right? So our normal patrols are what's really pissing them off. What do you think? Are we provoking the Chinese? Because in a way, it could be seen as provoking because we are sailing our ships through these areas that they say don't put your ships in, right? Yeah. So are we provoking them or are we just doing business as usual?
I think it's business as usual. I think this is a conflict that has been happening for centuries. It's a regional conflict that involves Brunei, the Philippines, Malaysia, Taiwan, China, and at the heart of it is that these are really rich in oil fields, and the transit of a lot of oil business happens in the South Sea of China. So I think that's of critical importance to understand why are we sending this destroyer ship to patrol the area, because otherwise it's just granting this access and granting this territory to China that has been slowly but surely creating these artificial islands to claim the territory as theirs, but the islands do not qualify internationally to grant that right to China. So the dispute is ongoing, and this is just as an escalation. On the side of China, I think these declarations, making this seem like is another chain, another step on the chain like Iraq and Afghanistan, I think is just propaganda.
Yeah, well, of course, you can't really compare those things at all. But so what China's doing is they're building these artificial islands, right? They're basically piling sand up to make this artificial land, and then they put these runways where they can potentially land planes. So we know that what they want to do with these islands, they're not just building islands so that fishermen can go and people can go rest on the beach. They're looking at this as possible future military bases or places where they can advance militarily from. So we're talking about a place that's very close to the Philippines, a key U.S. ally. So obviously it's going to get a lot of people upset, right? And it's going to get a lot of attention. So the fact that there's so much backlash, and then China's coming out and saying, well, how dare you get in our way of doing something like this, in itself is ridiculous. Now, unfortunately, this has become a major source of tension between these two countries. And we've sat down with their president. We've tried to talk to them about what they're doing, and there seems to be no end in sight, and there really seems to be no solution to this problem.
And then there's another underscore, that is the TPP. If you see the countries that are involved in this dispute, most of them are part of the negotiation of the TPP, but China. So we do see that this is one axis, the TPP axis, trying to defend the commerce and the trade in the region, specifically the oil trade, and China pushing back and pushing strong and saying, we're not afraid, we will use military. And like you said, the escalation of the military presence in the region is real. China has the potential to fly bomber airplanes into the region. China, Malaysia, and the Philippines, they all have access to fighter jets in the region. So it's a very volatile conflict that we need to keep reporting on.
Right. Well, we want to know what you guys have to say. I mean, China is claiming the majority of the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest sea lanes. Let us know in the comments below. Should we be provoking them? Is it even provoking them just by patrolling through there? Let us know in the comments, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the Lip TV for more.